You don't have to venture across the multiverse to find a good adventure.
In fact, you don't even need to step away from your computer.
When veterans of our very favorite pastime outline the story, you know it's going to be a good ride.
Mystery, intrigue, and a copy variant wait for you among these digital pages as we talk through Tabletop Journey's newest release, The Traveler's Guide to the Multiverse.
Hey!
I'm your host, Sarah, and
I'm your other host, Morgan. We are two sisters
by marriage
who love to talk about stories.
From writing fiction and creating elaborate plot lines in D&D
to exploring the multiverse with Tabletop Journeys. We're Out of Initiative. Today we're talking to Lewanika, Glen, and Josh of Tabletop Journeys, the creators of The Traveler's Guide to the Multiverse.
We're so excited to have you guys here.
We are super excited to be here. Thank you so very much for having us, ladies. Yeah,
we really appreciate it. This is a great. I expect it to be a great time. So.
When I say we're excited to talk to veterans of our favorite pastime, we're really serious. We're so stoked. You guys have the credentials to really back it up. Do you want to give us a quick intro? Let our listeners know who you are, what you're about, and that incredible number of combined years that you have in experience.
That just makes us sound old, Morgan.
Yeah.
Season.
Season. I like it.
Yeah.
Like season.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
I am Saison of the
D&D. Yeah. So we are the Tabletop Journeys podcast. We are another tabletop role-playing game podcast out there in the interwebs. We talk a lot of Dungeons and Dragons, of course. We talk a lot of other games also. And really what we love talking about more than anything else is homebrew and making your own campaigns and writing your own stories. We're huge into storycraft and gamecraft and everything like that.
Content creation, some of the indie games out there that are coming out.
Yeah, exactly. And content creation in particular is what brings us all together here today with our most recent book, The Traveler's Guide to the Multiverse. So, yeah. And we've been the three of us have been role playing for this is Josh. Between the three of us, we need to update the number because I think we actually did the math. It's closer to 120 years between the three of us, So we've been at this for a while.
It's been a minute.
It's been a minute. Yeah,
it's over 100. I don't think we're closer to the 120 mark yet, but there's the debate is still, the jury's still out on the exact number, but we're definitely over 100.
And we're firmly into triple digits. Yeah. So.
Yeah, right. And we've known each other forever. Lewanika and I'm Glen, by the way, have known each other since we were 13. And Lewanika met Josh before I did. I'll let him tell you when. And then I did a couple of years later. But I've known Josh for over a decade years. As well. I was going to say pushing two at least.
20. Yeah.
I've known Lewanika for almost 30 years. So it's,
I like Glen said, I met Glen when we were in the Boy Scouts. So we were 13. Maybe a year or two after I started playing. And we've played role-playing games together pretty much since the second Boy Scout campout we were on, or pretty close to it. Glen's
it was
dad,
a big thing on our D&D campouts periodically.
Yeah. His dad was our Scoutmaster and DM for
I said D&D Scout trips, but I meant Scout trips.
Yeah. They were the same thing for us. There wasn't a Scout trip where somebody didn't have some kind of dice with them. Or we weren't at least role-playing without the dice, something from one of our various games. Most of the Scouts we were with played. Many of them still play today. We actually had one of them was an editor on our latest book. So, we formed great friendships and have been very tight ever since. Met Josh when I was just getting out of college. Josh was just going into college, but we both met at a live action vampire LARP. I was role playing somebody from South Boston. Josh is from South Boston. I believe his character. Yeah, shout out Quincy. South Shore. But Wollaston Beach. Got to get some clams. All the good stuff. But Josh picked up on both my accent and the level of detail I put into talking about it. Because with vampire, you're playing, generally speaking, real world places. So I was sprinkling into conversation real spots in Boston and on the South Shore. Josh, who's lived in the area, lived in the same town, like picked up on the fact this kid knows what he's talking about. He's not
We
just
were playing a crooked cop, so that
he's
was
not
also a
some
big
schmo.
hint.
I mean, yeah, that's the other thing. Playing a crooked cop, hey. But it worked, and so we connected on that level. We talked about all the places we had seen and been together, and how we likely missed each other at various points. And then we at that point also realized we had a large amount of common friends, and we just started hanging out. And then he came over for dinner some Friday night, and honestly, has pretty much for 15, 20 years never stopped coming over for dinner.
For dinner, exactly.
Like he was spleeny at the time. Like we were really
Yeah.
just trying to keep him alive. It was like feed him and make him role play. He can't expend too many calories that way. So that's kind of how we got together.
Sarah, you sound like you had a question.
I just wanted to ask how they met and how they got into D&D, and they answered. It was great.
Yeah. Yeah. We will tell that story to anybody that will listen, and 20 people that won't. So that,
Yeah, when we got into how I got into D&D, my dad, who was the game master at those campouts for the beginning, ran my first game when I was 8 with my mom and my sister, which was pretty cool, out of the original
Amazing.
starter set.
Yeah, amazing.
And one of the greatest things before Glen's dad passed earlier this year was we spent a good portion of time about 2 years ago before right before the pandemic. Glen was running a family game, and so I got to sit shoulder to shoulder with the guy who was my scoutmaster, my DM guy. I even called dad for all those years and play, and he played the greatest dwarf ever, like to the point where sometimes it's like dwarves aren't quite dwarvy enough unless it's senior playing them. So that
that was a good time bringing my dad to my table. That was fun.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, and it was a good family game. It was Glen, his wife, all of his kids,
three of my 4 children,
3 of his 4 children, one of my 6 children, his dad, and we just had an absolute blast. That game was so fun. One of my best characters too.
That sounds awesome. Well, I know all of us, I'm guessing based on when you started, that you, like us, started pen and paper, right? And then you've since moved digitally, at least for the actual play podcast portion. Are you guys playing like D&D Beyond or other digital methods when you're running your games?
Yeah, we use a lot of D&D Beyond. Especially with our actual play stuff. All the characters, the NPCs, and everything like that, they're all in D&D Beyond, and we use D&D Beyond. We also have a whole series of shows called Class Warfare episodes, which are basically the 3 of us roll up tunes in the same class, and then bring somebody on to go ahead and throw bad guys at us and see who wins. But all those are up on D&D Beyond also. But D&D Beyond has been a critical tool for us to go ahead and do what we do.
Yeah.
For VTTs, I've used Roll20. At the moment, we think we like Owlbear the best. It's very, very, very low tech. It gives you the map and that table, so you can cover the visual representation like you're at a table, but you don't have to literally be able to program in order to be able to set up its features, because it doesn't have it. It's just basic.
I am a neophyte when it comes to computers. Actually, that's probably underselling myself a little bit. I'm actually I'm not great. I'll say that.
He's come a long way. He very much undersells himself, but he was a curmudgeonly, anachronistic.
Yeah. But I will say this about Owlbear versus some of the other tools. I love some of the things that they do. I've played at Roll20 tables. There's some amazing things it does with Fog of War that's really brilliant. Some of the macros that other people have built, I've been able to use to great effect and enjoyed them greatly. I don't do macros.
You should see what Marty's learning to do. I mean, he's taking Roll20 apart. He's learning it.
Yeah. That's just not my skill set. Owlbear Rodeo is more for those of us who are quick and on the fly. If I want to run a game that's really fast, I'm going to go to Owlbear because I don't need to do it. I literally load a map. I have a stock set of tokens. I spend way too much time in that rabbit hole called Pinterest picking tokens. Josh found me a token creator, so now I'm out going through immeasurable numbers of pictures and file photos to build tokens that are more custom to the characters. My players love Hero Forge, so they'll get tokens from there, just the pictures, or they'll buy them. So they have them that way as well. And I will absolutely just use those. So I have a whole bunch of tokens. I'm always looking for stock stuff. I'm always looking for stock maps. I'm a Patreon subscriber to like 5 or 6 different map
Me
content
too.
creators. And I get daily emails with maps. I get Reddit. I'm in Reddit with maps. And I'm always putting stuff up there. And I'm like, it so jazzes my creative process, but I don't have to do any of the labor. It's literally click, save, upload, done. And the token, it works really well. And there are some deeper features.
Yep.
I've actually been figuring them out a little at a time and learning them. I just learned how to make something a mount so you can attach a character to it. So when you move the mount, the character goes with it. It's freaking
Fun.
awesome.
Right.
Those are the kinds of things I love, and it's fast. My players pick up on it. I give them a link; they can move their own stuff, and I can still hide the stuff I don't want them to see. So that's everything a DM really needs without any of the back of the house work.
Yeah, that's fair. We're kind of obsessed with Dungeon Alchemist right now, which is the AI engine where you draw a square and
I
it
backed that
populates the
Kickstarter,
room
yeah.
and everything.
Mhm.
And I was really not. I didn't want to go down the macro rabbit hole because we're again all do-it-ourselfers in this house. We're very like, well, I mean, if I could do that, like, what else could I do? And I just didn't need to go down that rabbit hole. But Dungeon Alchemist has like a really easy macro that you just like you attach it to Roll20. It's like built in, and then you can hit export, and then you just like drop a text file that the program gives you, and it resizes the map and sets up all the dynamic lighting and
It
like
does the
does all
lighting
of
for you. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's
Wow,
pretty
it's
great.
pretty
hot.
cool because
Mhm.
otherwise I really wouldn't dabble with macros. I have accidentally filled our Roll20 chat with like nonsense before. I've done it a bunch of times, like more than I
Yeah.
care to admit. So
Yeah.
I'm wondering though, when we talk about the difference between pen and paper and digital, obviously our current the climate right now doesn't allow for in-person games as readily, but are there things that you miss about pen and paper or things that you just can't live without in the digital sphere?
Oh man. I'll start there. So
Yeah.
I am so in a little bit of maybe I don't know, maybe this won't be weird, but like for somebody that lives my life pretty much digitally, like I'm a software developer, I am online all the time, every day. I much prefer in-person games over online games. In fact, I did not like online games for a long time. It's only been really since we started doing the actual play that I've kind of realized kind of how uh, kind of by necessity how to make virtual games work, but I mean I've been in games that were in person before the pandemic, and then had to go virtual when the pandemic started, and that fell apart within a couple of months because it's just the dynamic just wasn't the same. It takes a much more immersive game style to make a virtual game work, right? Because you don't have that kind of face-to-face interaction, right? You don't have the ability to kind of look across the table and crack a joke, with the guy across the table or whatever, or the other person across the table or whatever. And so I think that for me anyway, what I have found is that I can make it work by making the game more immersive, by making the game more collaborative, by kind of really making sure that I'm drawing those players into the game, to kind of replace that sort of the experience of being kind of one-on-one at the same table. But I still, as soon as I was able to, I started my own game, and it ran in physical space as opposed to virtually. In fact, we talked about switching virtually because we haven't been able to play in a couple of months. And the pushback from the players is like, absolutely not. They want to be back in the physical space with everything. So, so we're gonna keep doing that when we can. But yeah, it's a challenge. It's absolutely a challenge.
Absolutely.
So,
I mean, I look forward to when I get to play in the physical space again, because I haven't in quite a long time.
Yeah.
And it's different online. It's fun. Don't get me wrong. But there's kind of two schools of thought. One is you get just enough tools to make it function and keep it more theater of the mind ish, like Table was, which is what we're talking about. We're running with a more low tech VTT. Or you can go with a more high tech VTT, work in all of the macros, however you do them. Dungeon Alchemist sounds fantastic. I'm going to have to look into it. And that brings it into kind of more, and I think this helps bring in some of the newer, younger players because it makes it kind of more like an online role-playing game. It brings it more into the video game sphere by adding more of those tech tools. And both are a lot of fun. I mean, they really are. But you lose something not being at the table. You lose body language. You lose as much tone of voice. Crosstalk over any platform gets confusing, but at a table it can be handled much more eloquently.
With
I
a
guess
glance.
our ears do better than these things do at projecting it back, right?
Yeah.
So you lose a lot when you're playing it virtually, but you get a lot too with all of the reach that you have, and you can play with anybody in the world. I mean, I'm playing in games with, when we did our Against the Dark Master playtest, we were playing with a company in a game that's based out of Italy. You know, when we play with Danello, we're playing with somebody from the UK. Like, global games are possible now. So there's not really a which one would I prefer. They're both great. It's just different.
It's just different.
Yeah, I think the body language thing is probably one of the three things I miss the most about in-person gaming, because if there's something going on and you need to grab somebody's attention, a finger wave while you're having an in-character conversation covers that ground. Does not work on virtually at all unless you happen to catch the person at the moment they see you do it, and then everybody catches
But
it.
everybody else sees it too, and they're like, "Why is he
And they all
gesturing
think
at
it's
me
like,
like that?"
yeah, like what's this, And then heaven help you if you're like, in England and you give them one of these or something, and they're talking. That's bad form, Lewanika. Bad form, you know. So, you miss some of the body language things. One of the things I really miss, especially because we used to do it at Glen's house, is dinner.
Right.
Eating while you game. We used to do it for our
Mm-hmm.
LARPs, where we'd have, like, we're gonna have an actual in-game session where all our characters get together, but we would put on this huge meal. There'd be like 12, 14 of us. Everybody brings something. We put on this great meal. We have some like
Mhm.
amazing stuff.
Yeah.
Bribe your
Friends will
DM with a
bring
bottle of
meat
Mountain
or
Dew.
whatever. Yeah, all I miss that part of it, and I miss we're finished playing, but we still have some time for for chatting and stuff like that. Online, you can do all that. Like on my Monday night game, I'm very frequently, it ends around 11 o'clock at night. I'm very frequently on the line with at least one or two of my players till 1 or 2 in the morning, just yapping about life and things like that. But what virtual gaming gives us that the tabletop game can't give us, at least me anymore, is the ability to reconnect with the people I grew up gaming with.
Totally.
Josh
Right.
is in Maine. Glenn and I, we live fairly close. We're about 35 minutes away. We're in Connecticut. That other friend that I mentioned that edited our book, he's in North Carolina or South Carolina? North Carolina, I think. I get to game with him a couple times a month now. I couldn't do that. We would never be able to sit at a table and game again. In fact, it had been nearly 25 years since I sat at a table or did any kind of role playing with Marty. That's a challenge for me. I got back when the pandemic first started. I had time off because like the world had time off. So
Yeah.
I got into a whole
Right.
bunch of games virtually, but I got into games with a bunch of people that I hadn't gamed with in 20 years, and I'm still in one of those games that streams uh, uh, every month. Streams of Spira with Benito Sinese and
Hey, I'm
Spectre
in that one too.
Studios. Glenn's in that one. I would never have had that opportunity were it not for the virtual game. And
Right.
I don't ever want to stop playing with with that crew either.
Yeah, virtual is never going away for us because
Oh,
it
yeah.
just
Yeah.
lets us
Yeah.
reach
No.
too many people.
Yep.
Yeah.
The players in my Monday night game, I met at a virtual convention because the convention that I used to
Mhm.
go to, that's live for the first time this month. I'm going back there later this month. Uh, was the very first virtual one they did, and so I had not met any of them, even though similarly we're all in the same nerd circle. So we have a lot of mutual friends. They sat and played at my virtual table. A few things happened. We didn't quite finish the adventure in that first night. Nearly had a TPK on the first roll of the dice.
Oof.
Craziness.
Been there.
Craziness. Took out like 3/4 of the party. Had to do some DM theatrics and acrobatics to kind of pull back from that situation. And then we made arrangements to meet a couple weeks later. We met a couple of weeks later. Brought Glenn, his wife at the time, in, and his nephew in to the game to beef up the party a little bit because they needed it. And
And it's still running.
that game is still running strong. It's amazing. And though the people in that group, we are now very good friends.
Right.
We've gone out a couple times, had drinks, karaoke, at a local burger place. They've come to my annual end of summer party that we put together, bounce houses and food, and I make all kinds of good food. So it's virtual is allowing us to connect in ways that we couldn't when it was just a table.
Right.
Add to that, like I said, I got 6 kids. I got 4 grandkids. I have a full-time day job. Uh, you know, Getting places is hard, and the world is spread out more than it used to be, I think, and our friend groups are spread out more. So schedules are difficult. I would never be
The
able to
people
game
moved, but I think the distance between each point actually stayed the same.
maybe. Maybe. I say maybe. At the cost of gas, it feels like it's a lot further.
Yeah, fair.
Yeah.
There.
That's
Okay.
true.
Touche.
I'm not going to get politics on it. I'm going to back off that comment.
Parry and riposte.
But I will say that it would be impossible for me to game any weeknight because I don't get out of work until 7:30. I physically live an hour away from where I work. So I'm not home until 8:30 or 9 o'clock most evenings. So that's it. Weeknights are out. That leaves 2 days on a weekend. I have a family, so I can't game both of those days. I would be gaming once or twice a month. That's it. I am currently running though I'm taking about a month and a half hiatus because I'm getting ready to move. But I am currently um, running 2 full-time games every other week. I am, along with the three of us, we run actual play games with our patrons. So at least once every other month or so, I'm running a game there. I play in a live stream once a month. I do. I have done some virtual events. I've got a convention coming up this month as well. The volume and, as you know, podcasts, a lot of work, a lot of time. I
Yeah.
mean, if you
Talking
want,
about this is easy.
yeah, it's easy. Look, this takes no time. Like just because it's an hour on air doesn't mean it took us like 2 hours to get everything together. That never happens. It's really
Yeah.
just an hour.
Yeah, that busy schedule. I mean, VTTs and virtual
Yeah.
play is the only way to bring it back in,
Yeah.
right? To bring it into your life.
Yeah, so I love gaming. It is my decompress. When I have a very stressful day, I'm hating the day job, or I'm really stressed about whatever's going on. It is both a form of escapism and catharsis all at the same time. And so I need the virtual there. Do I want a live game? Yes, I would love to get back to at least one regular live game because I miss that. But I would still be playing all the virtual games I have now. So
Well, we're very excited for your new book. You're talking about
Yeah.
being so busy, and I don't know how you had the time to write The Traveler's Guide to the Multiverse. Can you tell us a little bit about it, or why you decided, after playing
Yeah.
all the time, why you decided to make your own?
Oh man! Wow. Okay, so first of all, that's a great question. Why did we decide to go ahead and write this book?
I don't think anybody's asked us why.
I got an answer though.
Why?
Yeah, I
I
have an
just do
answer.
this thing.
I have an answer.
So, man, starting probably back in November or December of last year, we'd kind of dabbled in the content creation space a little bit. We'd done a couple of smaller projects here, and we realized like this is really what we wanted to do, right? We get the chance in the podcast to go ahead and talk about awesome people who have done their awesome thing, and we get to bring them in and talk to them and geek out about that all the time. And I think that after doing that for about a year and a half or so, we were like, you know what if we did the awesome thing, right? Like,
Right.
what if we did the awesome thing? Wouldn't that be cool? And we had at that point, we didn't really know exactly what the book was going to be. Kind of all three of us just kind of went off into our separate corners and then just wrote bunches of random things. Like we wrote some creatures, we wrote some magic items. We didn't even really know what the book was going to be. It was just kind of like, write what you feel like writing and then throw it into a Google Drive and we'll figure that out later. And then of course, over the course of the next couple months, we kind of got winds of Spelljammer and everything like that. And we're like, oh, you know what would be great? Like, we have like 2/3 of this stuff all kind of has to do with like extra planar or extra timer extra timer,
Timer?
whatever.
Yeah.
Timey-wimey.
Timular? Is that even a
Exactly.
word?
Yeah, it's extra
Timular.
It is
Temporal.
now.
Extra timular, yeah.
Let's go with
Normally
temporal.
Lewanika's the one that invents words on the show. I guess that's my job tonight. So
Yeah.
but yeah, so we kind of realized that there was a theme, and so the Traveler's Guide to the Multiverse was born from that. And we had probably a good half of the content written at that point, just kind of based on our pre-work, and then kind of filled in the gaps from there. Probably right
Selected
up
the
until
stuff that really fit, and then
yeah. Through several brutal rounds of cuts, I will add.
Yeah.
And then probably right up until the day before the PDF was finalized, we were still writing material. So
and
that's
making changes, and catching errors.
Yep.
yeah. So
And
many
you'll still
errors.
find them because every published work has them.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So Spelljammer, this was intentional, not just like some incredible coincidence.
We had
Yeah.
heard enough to have suspicions. I mean,
Yeah.
Traveler's Guide to the Multiverse had been announced. The Spelljammer UA, when the GIF/GIF, depending on whether or not you're me or Josh, was reannounced. And just watching the UAs and the things that Wizards has been talking about and putting out, we were pretty sure. So we made sure to include, since we're going multiversal, there's 2 ways to access that.
Yeah.
Through the planes, and I don't think we're going to get a Planescape book anytime soon, and through Spelljammer. So there's like 3 backgrounds in there that are Spelljammer specific, and
Yeah.
And once we knew with Mordenkainen's Monsters of the Multiverse, once we knew that was going to be like a race and creature centric book, we decided very intentionally to go ahead and write a book that could be used with that had everything else. So it's like you could pick a race from Mordenkainen's book and add your background, your feats. The only thing we didn't do in this one was subclasses, right? And that was kind of intentional. But like that was very much by design. We like Glenn said, we knew enough that it was coming, and we knew, if nothing else, that the Mordenkainen's book was out. It's like, okay, well, that's Monsters of the Multiverse. What else can we write to go ahead and make those round, make those, make them more than just kind of races and everything like that. And then it kind of have to go back to like the normal D&D trope stuff to go ahead and build out your character. So we decided to go ahead and design a whole bunch of multiverse specific stuff to add on to those races. So.
And don't get me wrong, there was still a little bit of luck involved. I mean, they announced Spelljammer like boop as our book came out.
Yeah.
So that was pretty perfect.
Amazing. It was like, oh, the clouds parted and the light shone down on you 3. Like that was amazing.
Well, I mean, we have been at this role playing for a long time. We've been in this podcast space for just a year and a half, getting towards the end of our second year here. But in addition to that, we have all at various points in our lives done very creative endeavors. Glenn is a published writer, author. I have had poems published years and years ago when I was in high school and whatnot.
Me too.
I also had 2 published. I scripted 2 comic books that were published when I was in my early 20s. I owned a comic book store, so I was kind of in that world. And for a long time, my goal was to be a writer. Like that was kind of my overall goal.
Since I was in kindergarten.
Yeah, life required me to eat and have heat and hot water. So that really slowed me down because while
something else the internet has changed, you don't have to be a starving artist or a starving author anymore.
Yeah.
Sorry, continually.
Yeah.
It's so much easier to pursue as a side gig now.
Yeah, and so for a lot of years, the thing I wanted to do was be creative. The jobs I had to take to get by and get through life were not, and I felt really boxed in by work. Like I'm not saying like I diss my 9 to 5 a lot. That's probably a bad image to portray. I get it. I do it. It's just not where I draw my joy and my happiness. It's what I do to get by. My joy and my happiness came from role playing. It came from my family. It came from doing creative things. Josh and I were in a band for a long time. We wrote songs together. We performed in garages and living rooms. We never did big gigs. Occasionally, because I have lots of friends in music, I would get on stage at an actual concert and be able to sing with them. Things like that are fun. I love karaoke. Creative endeavors jazz my life. So when we got the opportunity to do this, and the podcast is clearly our focus, but content creation, because we have a message, we have a purpose. Content creation is a way is another avenue to show that purpose and send out that message.
It's another media outlet.
we love narrative. We love creative stories. We like unique and different ways to bring out good stories. I said the dragon I am typically chasing is that great role play scene where everybody's like, "Oh, that just happened." And so, if we can be a part of creating something that's a tool to get that feeling at one table, job well done.
Yep.
If we can get it at 10 tables, job well done. We're really hoping we can hit a couple hundred, a couple thousand. But what I'm saying is the idea is we just want to be part of that that creative process, not just for ourselves, but for other people. And that's where content creation is the natural evolution beyond the content creation that is our podcast and our conversations.
I'm going to totally steal a quote from friend of the show, Jimmy Flowers of Splinterverse Media, and say that we want one thing in this book to be whoever picks it up. We want that one thing in this to be their favorite thing, right? Like
Right.
that's really kind of the goal that we, write it for the people out there that they can go through here and say, oh, this one thing is going to make my game better or make my next character legendary or whatever, right?
Ooh,
That's
good
really
branding
what we're aiming
insert.
for. Yeah.
So, well, I got to say, first of all, my next campaign that I'm prepping to run is all like naval based, but I wanted there to be the option to move into space. We've been talking about this for a long time. And I opened the PDF that you sent over, background number 1, Cosmic Stowaway, and I read through it and went, I already know what character this is going to be. So like that background is like in my next campaign. I'm like, I just got so excited about it. And I think a lot of this content really resonated. Sarah and I talked a lot about how a lot of this content really resonated with us. We really liked it. I think it's really wonderful stuff.
Great. Well, thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Absolutely.
So what I just heard you all say was that each of you said we should write a book, and then you went separate directions, and you each wrote 1/3 of a book, and then you came back together, stitched it up, and then released it the day Spelljammer was released. For like that sounds incredible. But I want to know the real writing. Like, what was your actual writing process? We're obsessed with storytelling. We love it, and I'd love to know like what was that process really like for you guys?
So we started out with categories. Like Josh said, we were looking for covering the bases that we knew wasn't going to be in Mordenkainen's with creatures from a perspective of either space travel or planar travel. Travel being an operative word, which is why some of the items in there, I mean, we went with it. You've got Kazat's. Kazat's is in the next book. Apologies. Spoiler alert.
Whoa! I said cut that part out.
That's okay. It's fine. Sprocket's Traveling Compendium is a book that holds other books. It's a Kindle, right? So we went with a lot of travel ideas, and but we all separated and we had a list. We wanted magic items, we wanted mundane items, we wanted backgrounds. So we all just worked on writing those things. So it wasn't completely unfocused, right?
Yeah.
So we came back in and reviewed what we had for each of the categories that we wanted to put in the book and trimmed from there and rewrote and
play tested and for me personally, my process was once we had the categories, it was pretty easy. How many backgrounds do I think I could do well that fit the overall theme? Because at that point, by the time we had categories, we had an idea of what the theme was. It wasn't fully formed, but it was close enough where I wasn't trying to make an Imperial Stormtrooper, and I knew that, right? So I knew the kinds of things I was looking for.
Next time.
Next time. So I said, what are the backgrounds that I can come up with that would fit that? So I wrote a couple. Then it's like magic items. What are some of the magic items I'm using in my game or I have built that fit this theme? So I have my D&D Beyond with all my homebrew stuff that I've not shared with the world that I use at my tables. I've seen how they work, how they don't work. Many of the magic items were actually play tested at our own tables over time. So a lot of the magic items I submitted were ones that had been used previously. Now, knowing how they play tested, I changed a lot about them as far as how they work, the mechanics that they work, then put that in the group and then moved on to the next topic. And we just kept going. And then I would say the real hard part was not those categories. The hard part and the challenge was the story hooks. We come up with good stories all the time. A polished story that appears on a printed page or a digital page for sale is different than some half-baked idea I wrote out on a napkin that I basically run and fix on the fly at my next
Right.
game.
Yeah.
That's
And it's
That's how
different
I
than a
describe
hook.
all my campaigns. Wait.
I love the napkin thing because that's how Joe Elliott wrote Pour Some Sugar on Me, a great song. I love it. I'm an 80s kid
Such
all
a good
day long.
song.
Right. So I'm perfectly okay with starting something on a napkin, but I'm imagining at some point it had to get a little more involved than just the napkin. So,
Yeah.
you know, this was taking it beyond the napkin. That's kind of
Beyond the
where
napkin.
that's a soundbite for you.
Right. To
Beyond
coin a
the
beyond the
phrase.
napkin.
Yeah, beyond the napkin. But that's when the hard work came on the stories, because it was an idea and
Yeah.
then it's how do you flesh it out. And initially we were writing hooks that were just like one liners or bullet points, and we're like, that's not good
That's
enough.
lame.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
people
So then
we're
making
writing
it
the people that we're writing for need more than that. We want to give the DM something that they can really sink their teeth in. We didn't want to give them everything. We wanted
right.
DMs to create stories. We wanted DMs to take an idea and say, I can run this as an adventure in my campaign.
Yeah. We want to just
Or
make some scaffolding.
I can take this and blow it up into a campaign. So we just kind of did that. And once we made that decision, the ideas flowed quickly. The process got better as we went. I am better at writing adventures now than I was when we started this book. That's a fact. And it
Amazing.
started with those plot hooks. And you know, I always go back to the passenger. I and I
It's a
wrote
really good one.
a couple of them. The passenger was one that I so loved. It is the one that I've expanded. I've actually written a full adventure. It's still it's a little bit beyond napkin stage at this point. But that is what I'm running at the convention later this month, and I put the pitch out to the Drinking and Dragons folks, and it seems to be getting pretty good reviews. Generally, my tables fill up in about 15 minutes when the seats go on sale for that event. So I'm hoping that this one does that about that well. That's kind of my goal. That's my if I can sell out in 15 minutes, I feel really proud of what I did just for that drop. And then that puts the onus on me to deliver. So
You should be proud. That's incredible. That's amazing. That's the dream. Like, I would love that.
So you were talking about like background and making all the magic items and the prompts for storytelling. What did you feel like was the most challenging to work on or to come up with? I mean, it could be fun, but also like challenging of all of it in there.
You know, so you will notice that. So Glen is a writer, and Lewanika is a writer, and I'm an artist and a tech guy. You'll notice that the one kind of skill set we don't have on the crew here is layout. Like none of us knew how to like we dabble with Adobe a little bit here and there, but like none of
I
us
do
have
some
really like
graphic
put
arts,
together,
but
you know, right? Like none of
publication.
us have like stitched together a book, and so that was that learning curve. She's steep, y'all. Like that's you know, there was
and
you know,
and unforgiving.
unforgiving, yeah. But you know, and so it's like, yeah, that was really tough because we just didn't know how to do it. And but you know, it's also like when you kind of believe in the material enough and you know enough about the material and how it's supposed to stitch together, it gets to the point that it's like, oh, I know how I can make this work. I know how I can, you know, if I, you know, maybe this is one paragraph too long. So if we tighten this up a little bit, I know it'll fit better on the page, and I know exactly kind of the art that I want to use for that now and everything like that. So, you know, like, yeah, the layout was tough, and we learned a lot doing this book. I mean, putting a book together, I will speak for my other co-hosts and say that putting a book together is probably harder than we thought that it was going to be when we started this journey in November. You know, it's not just, you can't just like wake up and do it. Like it actually takes like some forethought and some time.
Effort, some late night planning meetings, and
Consistency was a really big challenge too. Because with 3 different authors writing magic items and backgrounds and each category, but on their own and isolation without having an established process yet for terminology or you know, the way we're going to phrase mechanics, etc. meant everybody's stuff did not match in terms of how the mechanics were laid out. The wording was used for feats. So that was a big challenge too, but it kind of ties into layout. It's that piece of that formatting that takes it from beyond the napkin to an actual published work. But that was a lot. That took a while.
I would say art direction was challenging but amazing.
Fun.
It was so much fun. At the time we got to the bulk of the art direction on the book, we were coming close to our own self-imposed deadlines.
Yeah.
And so a bit more harried than I would have preferred. But I think we got everything that we would have wanted. There's nothing that made the page that I am not 100% behind, with
Yep.
the exception of one bridge. Um,
The bridge.
The bridge picture is perfect. It may not be exactly what you imagined, but it's
Yeah,
perfect.
but it's perfect.
So that's a story hook I wrote and I came up with. It was a lot of great polish from my companions here. It would not have been as good without them.
The
Period.
Bridge to Enlightenment is the full title of the hook.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But when I was, that is one of those things that came to me in some kind of weird fever dream. Not literally a fever dream. I dream a lot, and there's times I wake up and I tend to have paper next to my bed, so if I wake up in the middle of the night, I can hopefully jot down enough details from a dream before I forget it, so I can do something with it later. So it came to me in that kind of moment. I got up super early because I didn't want to lose the idea. I left my bedroom, ran into the office, wrote the basics of it, then promptly woke up about 20 minutes later with my head in the keyboard, went back to bed, got back up, and then started working on it some more. Uh, but I had a vision that I never lost for that picture, and I could not find artwork that matched that vision anywhere. So that is one of those things that if we had had more time
Or the budget to pay custom.
and a budget, that
Yeah.
the perfect picture would have had to have been customized for that.
Correct.
The picture we got was exceptionally good. It actually matched everything I wrote about. It simply wasn't the direction. I wanted you to be on the bridge looking across it, and all I was able to. But that's the exact bridge I pictured. It was just from the side looking onto the bridge versus
90 degrees
being on
off,
the bridge
yeah.
looking across. So that's the one thing. It was 100%, and honestly, I ended up at 98% with it. So I'm very pleased. But learning the types of things that are there, finding resources, subscribing to some services so we have those resources for all the things we do, and making sure it's above boards. We want to pay good content creators for the work they do.
Right.
Fair wages is a real thing for us.
Right.
And so we wanted to make sure we were able to do that. And learning how that works was really good. That's a skill set I did not have before we started. It's a skill set I'm building on now. I wouldn't say I'm 100%, but I would have never thought art direction would have been something I could have done. But I found out that I was able to contribute. Like, there's things that were like, how does that fit? And then I could say, oh, if you did this thing over there, that would kind of work. And then yeah, that would work. It felt good to be able to contribute in a space that I wasn't subject matter expert on.
So, being honest, I got to say that our timeline was a complication too. I mean, thinking about it, we talk about it now,
Yeah.
and most of the time it just comes off as it all just came together. But our original timeline, because as we've said a couple of times, and Josh covered very well, we did not expect the amount of work that we were going to
Yeah.
have. We didn't realize how hard it was going to be and how long it was going to take. So our first set of dates that we threw out,
They were wrong.
Saved by Watsy when they split
Yeah.
Mordekainen's Guide to the Multiverse off into the subset and the second release, because that bought us more time, because not everybody was going to buy this one.
Yeah.
And if it weren't for that, it wouldn't be nearly as polished as it is.
Yeah.
So
If
we
put this book out in
definitely
January,
we're
it
saved a
would've been
little bit by that delay. But
I will say this: our timeline would have been fine if this was our only job.
Yeah, that's fair.
oh, absolutely.
Mhm.
If this was full time for us, that original timeline would have been fine, because I think our total hours on project is, with the exception of extra time for art direction, because we had extra time at that point. I think our hours on project were about what we had originally allotted for. We
That's
just left out like breathing air and
Yeah.
walking about
Our families and
our families.
It's just eating and sleeping and going to the bathroom. Like, I don't need that.
Not important.
Cut it. Cut
totally extra.
Yeah.
I don't
Extra.
understand what's the big deal.
it. Yeah. It's funny you say that you get ideas from dreams. We talk about this all the time. I am like a super vivid dreamer, and my best monsters, my best custom monsters are like, whoa, that was terrifying. Better write it down. And the mouse was on his stomach. All right, here we go. just like the best stuff. So I totally identify with that. That's awesome.
I just simply got to like I can see like a building or like I'm in a mall. I'm like, this would be a great place for an action sequence. I can see somebody coming down here doing this thing. So that's just how I think very spatially that way. And so which is why many of my encounters are involve lots of terrain and distances and elevations and things like that, because that's what makes it interesting and fun for me.
That's Morgan and I have talked about that too, about like, if we're coming up with a one shot, what inspires us for that one shot. And you were saying maps, right, Morgan? Like you see the map.
So like you're saying, Lewanika, like the map or the location, like something I saw, whether it's the digital version or the in-person version, is usually what inspires me to, like, that's where the hook comes from for me almost always.
Yeah.
Oh no, absolutely. I could look at a map and totally come up with a scenario to fit it. I mean, they're very narrative.
And see, I'm like the opposite. The map is like the last thing I make. Like I come up with like what's gonna happen, and who are like the other NPCs, or who's the monster or whatever, and then the map's like last.
I'm the same way.
That way too.
I want to figure out what I want to do, and then find the map.
Yeah.
If I'm playing something brand new, it's usually something very visual that helps me create it. So like for the Passenger, I just love the idea of the lightning train, the lightning rails in Eberron. So I'd never seen a lightning train map, but I have seen tons of old westerns, train robberies, things like that. And one of my favorite books and multiple movies, multiple TV shows, different ways it's been done, is Murder on the Orient Express. So I've always visually wanted some kind of conflict on that. It's, to me, the only saving grace of Under Siege 2 was I like the idea of putting it on a train, even though the movie did it badly.
How could it not?
Put it on a train, it levels up whatever.
Right?
Snowpiercer,
they're all
there. Not really an Under Siege 2.
However, Snowpiercer still can't kill Sean Bean, so I don't even understand like what's happening. They're clearly not good at taking out people on that show. But
you jumped to a better movie the second time.
Yeah.
Here's my issue with Sean Bean. Why don't his names rhyme? Like it should be Sean Bon or Sean Bean.
It seems so obvious. Like whose PR person is overlooking
this?
There.
Right?
It's right there.
Yeah. I imagine he probably said no, and then they saw some of his fight sequences in GoldenEye and said, even though he lost that one, I don't want to get hit by that dude.
No, that's fair. That's fair. Yeah.
He's not a small dude.
Right.
True. Yeah.
I saw the way he swung the sword in Game of Thrones. Like, that's fair.
He's got some grit. Like the only way you're taking him out is by sucker punching him and then sneaking up on him and making him think it's going to be okay. But
so in regards to the book you wrote and with Spelljammer and everything, what kind of players do you think would most enjoy this, or what DMs would you think get the most out of your book?
I would say I'm going to take the DMs and the storytellers out first, and then I'll let the other guys chime in. I would say it's the storyteller who has never been entirely satisfied with what comes in a book to begin with. It's the storyteller who says, this is cool, but I need to bring it up a level, right? Yeah. There's something it's missing. Like, look, when we wrote our Crew Serve Weapons, ballistas and catapults, they're in the primary game. They're there. They're just blah. Like there's nothing exciting about them. And there's nothing about them in the game that makes you feel like using these items in a television show. And what we did was create rules to give that cinematic feeling to it. But we also had to find rules, and this is where the work came in, that were not so complicated. There are plenty of games that can mirror a cinematic system, but they can be very complicated. That doesn't match what 5e is, and two, most people won't use it. So we want the DM who's looking for a streamlined method, easy to teach their players, fun at the table, quick at the table, doesn't bog things down, but wants things to be a little more involved. If my people are defending a castle and they're under siege, I want them to be on the ramparts doing something other than firing an arrow. I want them to be commanding a unit. I want them to go back. So it goes back to some of that 3-5 stuff where it's like you have followers or you're marshaling troops of some kind. We're not looking to make this Warhammer. We're not looking to make this Necromunda or any of the other
Yeah.
great tactical games, but we are looking to give a better feel towards what people are doing. And I think that's the kind of storyteller that this book appeals to. Like,
Yeah.
what's going to make a better story? What's going to make a more enjoyable story? What's going to really bring this out best? And we've got things for that in all of these categories and these plot hooks.
Yeah, we're not trying to take the 64 color box and make it 128 colors. We're trying to take those 64 colors and make them more vibrant, make them more real, make them better, right? And that's really at the end of the day what we're trying to do. And I think that, you asked about the players too. I think the players that are going to love this book are the players that like coloring outside the lines a little bit, right? That like it's kind of like what Lewanika said too, that like, read the book and like, man, if only this background did this instead. We're not looking for, we didn't create like brand new classes. We didn't even create brand new subclasses or anything like that. We really kind of tried to go ahead and write new stuff that operates very much within the D&D wheelhouse, right? We didn't want anything in the book to feel strange or out of place. And we really think that we accomplished that everything in the book fits neatly into the D&D realm and the D&D world and everything like that. So we're not, that's I think the kind of players that are going to have the most fun with this is like the ones that still enjoy the basic D&D rule system, but needed just a little bit here, a little bit there. I think about the elemental nature feats, right? That we wrote 4 different feats for the 4 different elements, right? We did something that Wizards did not do and have continued to not do, and that's we let you use physical stats as your spellcasting ability, right? And we did that on purpose because we felt that it was most appropriate to go ahead and do it that way based on the feats that are in there, and so like those kinds of things you'll find in this book.
Yeah.
And it's not just for, you got the player aspect, you got the storyteller aspect, but in terms of type of game, you could find something in this book for any type of game that you're running, just about. Now, we call it Traveler's Guide to the Multiverse, and we've talked a lot about Spelljammer and Planescape, and the multiverse in general. But if you're a DM out there or a player who's playing in just a world, you don't do a whole lot of planar travel, and you don't do anything in wild space, that's okay. You can play a cosmic stowaway who now is on this planet. That could still be your background if your storyteller approves it. You can be a Sigil Lightbearer, one of my favorite backgrounds. I loved writing that one.
Yeah.
Because I was really captivated when I was doing my research by Sigil, City of Doors, and Planescape. But you're not in Sigil anymore. Now you're, for whatever reason, in between you and your storyteller, you come up with the narrative and the background that helps bring the character to life or why they're on this world. And any of the magic items we have in there work for any world that you're on.
Any world.
Right.
So it's very
if you're in a low
themed.
magic world, if you're in a low magic world, the poultices of healing. If you need a healing option that's not magical, that is distinctly not magical.
Yep.
Those can come across, and with the crafting rules to go ahead and let your players know how to go ahead and find them and how to go ahead and make them on their own and everything like that. So
they work over a short rest to help you heal without expending hit dice. So just trying to find ways to fit in all of those little niches, but it's all set up so you could import it into any game because again, we like the home brewery and the customization. So we tried to make everything pretty much plug and play.
With all that, I go right back to the backgrounds and the mountebank, which was so fun to write, so fun to find.
It's an amazing background.
So fun to find the right picture. If you're looking for that Han Solo type character, or you're looking for that, and his name is now escaping me from Shadow and Bone, the gunslinger. Jasper, thank you.
Jasper,
If you're looking for that type of character who's always having that fun in that moment, but is a bit of a rascallion, the Montpank is really the perfect background because the
scoundrel.
Yeah, the charlatan, while it can work, it's not quite that. And there are a lot of good backgrounds. I'm a big fan of them. But at a certain point, there was a few things that I thought were kind of missing. So we're starting to write those in. The domestic service backgrounds, same thing. I'm a big fan of Downton Abbey, and I was in years past fan of Upstairs Downstairs. So I literally wrote a background, and we built in information for basically that show. I wanted to be those characters. I wanted somebody to say, I'm Branson, right? No matter what I'm doing now, I'm Branson. I was the chauffeur for this guy or for this family, but now I'm something different. And that's my background. And I think that that's awesome storytelling. There's a reason why they're on their second movie now, because it's awesome storytelling. And so that's the kind of thing that we wanted to bring to the marketplace, what we wanted to bring to the tables that are out there.
Well, there's a lot of content in the book and we want to drill down into all of it. So to try to like kind of hone us a little bit to keep us focused, we were thinking we would do a really quick little roll down.
I love it.
Do you guys have dice?
Do we have dice?
Always.
Okay. Yes,
Right.
perfect.
Pick a
Okay,
color.
good. So
pick a
then me
color,
saying I would love 6d10, someone to roll a 6d10 to help us choose a page number, and then we're going to jump in on this page and maybe have you tell us a little bit more in depth about what content we land on.
You're
All right,
talking
so each of us
60-10.
roll
I'm bringing
2d10,
up a
is that what we're
digital
doing?
roller.
Yeah, so if everyone just rolls 2d10, that'll.
Yeah.
That's math, right?
That is math. Math
is
is
hard.
hard.
Jinx.
All right.
Where the hell is my other D10? Damn it.
I actually keep like a classic like old school calculator just like at my desk all the time now, because we're always doing this. Is why I never play a barbarian. That's too much math.
Right?
My player I play a battle master, and my barbarian player, who's now at like 15th 14th almost 15th level, he does the same thing. We basically took like a weekend and we built basic sheets that had everything lined out with all the different permutations that we could do, and have it all laid out what our dice would be for it, so we don't have to think about it anymore, because it's hard.
We built a bunch of that in one of our campaigns that we run. The barbarian was really struggling because he's a radiant zealot. He's a
Asmar.
zealot barbarian.
Yeah.
He's a zealot barbarian and an Asmar.
Yeah.
And so we end up with all of these like funky little, he's got the light and it's doing radiant damage, and then also he's doing, he's raging, so he's doing a little extra something, and it got so hard. So we ended up making, I can't take credit for this, the DM of that game, who is my husband, made him a bunch of custom actions in D&D Beyond that like pump out all the dice that he needs. So it's like, first attack, you get this bonus, radiant consumption, you get this bonus, and it just like rattles through all of it, because it's like so hard to keep track of all that stuff.
Yep.
You would need like a notebook, and like I've heard Abria Iyengar makes flow charts for some of the players so that you can see like what, if this, then this, and this is what you can do during combat, because it's when you get higher level, you have so many abilities, it's so hard to keep track.
I am constantly forgetting stuff as a
Yeah.
battle master. So, and it fits narratively because he's a tactician. So I have it, and then in game we talk about how we role play. I'm practicing during downtime and things like that, and I share my sheet with the players who I practice with. And our storyteller is amazing, so he will frequently, if I talk about specifically what I'm practicing for the next fight, he will frequently give us a one fight bonus to something that's taking place. So like I did this one tactic that would work. He's like, okay, so during this next fight, you now get advantage on X action because you practice it for this. So it's like very much like in the military, you train for that specific mission, you get better at that one thing, and then the next mission you train for something else. So it's kind of, I love that aspect of it, but it does take a lot of effort and planning to get right.
All right.
Okay, so
Did
let's
you find your
roll?
D10 yet?
let's get
All
our
right.
2d10 each and then see where we land.
Alrighty.
I've got a 3 and a 4.
I've got a 9 and an 8.
I've got an 8 and a 7.
Okay, so we've landed at 39. So I'm going to hop over to Traveler's Guide to the Multiverse and grab page 39. Quelton Tell, is that the? Am I saying that correctly?
Yeah. Yeah.
Ooh.
It's an artifact.
This image is gorgeous. Tell us a little bit about this artifact.
Okay, so
We're in the magic item section, right?
Yeah, we are in the magic item
Okay.
section. So let us. So first of all, Lewanika, I will cast it to you in a moment here. But let me begin with the Umbral Force weapons in general. So
Yes,
Carlton
this is
tells
one
of a
them.
family of weapons called Umbral Force weapons, which are magical weapons created by a family of Shatter Kai. And there is a ton of lore, both in this book and maybe in projects to come, about this
Family.
this family of Shatter Kai, and how they derived their power and how they unlocked the secret of Umbral Force. And basically what an Umbral Force weapon is, it is a melee weapon that has a ranged component. So it is a sword that instead of striking the person in front of you, can strike you can do certain things to go ahead and have it strike somebody 30 feet away and stuff like that. So which brings us to the garrote, Cotland Tell.
Yeah. So Josh brought this general idea to the table and came with this amazing story for how this
Again,
was
howitzer to
done.
the face, right?
Yeah, and I loved it. And it immediately made me think of, but what about the family member that didn't get counted?
Yeah.
Right, the black sheep.
And I started thinking about the weapons themselves. This was not a necessarily nice family that was building these weapons to begin with.
No, they weren't.
But if there was a member of that family that even those members of the family were like, not so much. That's kind of where I was going. And I love the Shatter Kai. I played at an Adventure League table years ago, and there was a person who played Shatter Kai. I love the way he brought that to the table. He was at my table, part of one of my games for many years. Still a good friend. We're in a cosplay group together. Um, he and it made me think I want a Shatter Kai, but I want him to be the evilest of the evil. Like, I wanted this to be the character that no DM lets me play, but I can always use as a villain when I'm running a table. And I said, what's the kind of weapon that an assassin would use that was so vicious and so mean, that and I like it's a garrote. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a very personal thing when you're, you know, doing this, strangling somebody. I don't want to come across, I'm not a psychopath, I promise you, but I love stories about
You're
bad people.
describing a
It's like-
weapon. It's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, this is a
But-
great
Right,
evil
right.
character. Good foundation, absolutely.
Yeah. But so the idea was, well, what about how do I get this? Like the other weapons are very easy to describe with that umbral force, but I'm like, but I want this guy to be a cast off. And so I said, well, if I'm talking about cast offs, that's exactly what it's going to be. This is going to be made of. So that's when I built in the story of how it was formed, the cast off from the forging of the other artifacts in this section. This family member snuck in when everybody else was done, worked those cast offs into this garrote. But because he was so not liked by the family and he had so much hatred, this does something far different. So it's outside of the triptych of Umbral Force artifacts themselves, but it is on that same power level.
Her.
I'm sorry, her. And it, and so it was one of those stories that just wrote itself based on the story that was brought to the table. And I loved it. It got a great write up. The artwork that goes with it is not actually of the weapon specifically, but the artwork really made me think of that realm, and it made me think of that gloom, while still being colorful and beautiful. So that's kind of where it came from, and I love that weapon. It's a garrote that does some very nasty things, and it is an artifact. It is not a low tier item. This is this is one of those things that if a player gets hold of this, they're going to be in a very high tier. So you don't want to put this on with an NPC at lower tiers. You don't even want to show them what this is doing at tier 1 or tier 2. This is, you show them what's going on, and this is the thing they can't get hold of in tier 3, but this is a good tier 4 weapon. This is a straight up one shot killer for anything under tier 2 or tier 2 and under. It could legitimately one shot people.
Amazing. This looks so cool. I'm obsessed with the concept of this character. I think that's really incredible. And we talk a lot in our house about, like, I want a villain that is clearly defined as a villain. This is very clearly an evil, like, when you can outline it like that and say, like,
Right.
now we know, and this one doesn't have to be gray area. Now we know, yeah, that's a bad gal.
Yeah.
And that's just the lore behind her weapon.
Yeah. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. And there's more story for that to come. That's kind of, spoiler alerts. We have future things in mind. This is where this begins, not where this story ends.
Yeah.
Exclusive
I'm also-
scoop, guys.
Yeah.
We've got other stuff coming. You heard it here first, I guess.
Yeah, and I'm also really glad that you pointed out the art on the page too. I mean, so Lewanika had kind of made a nod to this earlier. One of the things that we are most proud about with this book is how we were able to find art that fit everything that we wanted in here. Thank you to Deposit Photos, which is a subscription service, where we found a lot of the stuff. But even things like Pixabay and stuff like that, we were able to find the images that we were all really proud of, and that's one of the things that we really was very much a focus of the book. And so I'm really glad that that kind of the first thing you saw when you was like, oh man, that image is fantastic.
It's a wow factor for sure. Yeah.
All the images are great. I've loved looking through all of the pictures. And it just is
the book is
amazing.
Gorgeous.
Yeah.
Just entirely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, we're at 36, so we're up just 2 pages from that. So between the Planar Talisman, the Sprocket's Traveling Compendium, and the Repelling Ring of the Raven, which of those would you like to talk about?
Okay, so Sprocket's Traveling Compendium is one of the things that I created while we were going with. I mean, when this whole project first started, I was like, man, how do I even crack this nut, right? And I kept asking for help. And Josh finally said, well, think of travel-related items and modify from there. And that's how we really went down the road of a Kendola portable charger, which is the Azurite power crystals, things like that. FaceTime device is the interplanar, Dream Crystal interplanar mirrors. But Sprocket's Traveling Compendium is a Kindle, effectively. It's a book that holds other books because Sprocket is a tinker gnome who loves books. And our actual play where he was first debuted, he actually does not participate in a fight and instead tries to defend the books of the book swarm, diving through it and tackling them out of the book swarm to make sure that they're not damaged. But he can be a huge amount of fun. And he has been studying extra dimensional spaces. So what better way to combine a magic item and an NPC that I love so much that I'm going to develop into a main NPC personality for a world than to give him a named magic item where he puts a whole bunch of books in another one. And it kind of works like a limited bag of holding. It holds 10 other volumes, and you can call them up at will, depending on what you want to read out of, and it keeps track of where you were last in each book. And so there you go.
I love it. That's awesome.
It's really cool. That's really cool. I think I'm gonna have to steal that for.
I think that's a fun.
Feel free.
Yeah. We're gonna be like, okay, and now that other one, we're basically just running your module at this point.
In
for our
a
home games,
future,
it'll be great.
For a spoiler thing, just for a future one, you will also at some point get Kazat's ever expanding field journal. But it's not. It was cut from this one in order to put in another one that will match better.
That's amazing. I'm so excited. Well, I honestly think the two of us could chat with you guys forever. Like this, I'm having so much fun.
I know, it's a good time.
Thank you so much for joining us today. As we wrap up, a couple things. First of all, I'm a bit of a karaoke fan myself, so I think at some point we're gonna need to get together for like an in-person game and some karaoke because that sounds so much fun.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if, as an outro, maybe you could just give us like a super brief overview on that South Boston accent. Like, I really want to come back to, I love voices. I love doing voices. And Boston is one that Sarah and I have talked about. And we just can't quite get to it. Could you give us some tips on a South Boston accent?
It's not Boston. You can't like drag out the vowel like that. No. So it's Boston. It's a very short, very, very, very snappy. Everyone keeps saying you pack the cat, the have it. No. It's way too long. Way too long. You don't want to go ahead and do any of that shit. Stuff. I almost dropped the naughty word. I can see my mother yelling at me.
We swear a lot. You're totally fine. You're golden.
That's fine.
So I hope it's okay to swear because I already did like 4 times, bro.
Yeah, exactly. Look, she's 76 and I'm still scared of the shoes. Okay, like they're flying at me now.
Because they hurt. I'm telling you, they hurt. Like,
Lewanika's she's thrown her shoes at him before.
Yeah, it's come pretty close to the head. I'm good at ducking. That's the thing. I'm good at ducking. So like,
get under cover. Get undercover
When
quick.
people are throwing shoes at
All
me, I know how to duck. I've been in lots of
All right.
situations.
If you really want to hear the Boston accent, I got the funniest story in the world. All right, so here we are. It's Thanksgiving dinner. Right, so I'm going home and I bring a companion home for Thanksgiving dinner to meet my mother for the first time. Right now, this companion grew up in a family where the language was a lot looser around the house than it was around mine. Right, my mother.
They weren't an Irish Catholic family.
Exactly. She's all a 5'2" Irish Catholic through and through. Right. Okay. Yep. So anyway, so this companion is in the kitchen. My mother's at the table. She's setting the table, and my mother, she calls to my companion and says, would you get me a fork and a spoon from the kitchen? Now you have to understand that when my mother says that and she's in a hurry, it's would you get me a fork and spoon? Now my companion, thinking that, oh, I'm in, Josh's mother just swore at me, yells from the kitchen, just hold your fucking horses, Lorraine. Now my Irish Catholic mother's face never changed. And I proceed to quench my asshole so tight for the rest of the evening
That would bucket up your butthole.
I haven't farted since, okay? So we're driving home, and I was like, what did you do? And she's like, what? What do you mean? It's like, you swore at my mom. She's like, your mom swore at me first. And I'm like, no, she didn't. She asked you for Oh.
I see now.
Yeah, no, I see what happened there. All right,
So,
yeah.
I've known Josh for close to 30 years. I call his mom
30 years.
I call his mom Ma.
Yeah.
And I tell you what, I swear a lot. I doubt she has ever heard me swear.
Yeah.
Not one time has she ever heard me swear.
Yeah. No.
I would be like, because I value breathing.
So,
and I love the fact that she loves me. And I don't want her to be mad at me. That's what his job is for.
I'm not trying to take up all of your airtime, but I got one more really funny story. And Lewanika was here when this happened, so he knows that this isn't bullshit. So my father, God rest his soul, had diabetes, right? And so I remember one Christmas dinner, we're sitting there, Lewanika and his family were over for dinner. There's 15 of us at the table. Again, big Irish Catholic family, right? Conversation goes quiet around the table. All of a sudden, my dad says, "Why couldn't it be syphilis?" Now, with no context, with no nothing. Right? Like no setup,
nothing.
No idea where this is coming from. And my mother, without skipping a beat, not knowing what my dad is talking about, says, "Because you'd have a lot of explaining to do, you asshole." That's my family, y'all.
Nice.
Oh my god.
That and the Sam Adams, that'll get you through the night.
Oh my god, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing your stories and your module and your storytelling. I just think it's amazing. We had so much fun with you three tonight, and we hope to have you back again. I'm going to be really honest.
Please, absolutely.
This is a blast.
Absolutely.
We'd be happy to.
Yeah, and we'd love to have you on our show, Class Warfare. Having you ladies join us for a couple of those every now and then would be great.
Ooh.
We have a lot.
Yeah,
We have a lot of fun with those episodes as well. So
we would be over the moon. I will speak for you, Sarah, because I think I know where you stand.
Yes.
We would love to do that. That sounds amazing.
Excellent. We'll have to go ahead and put that together. Absolutely.
So can you tell everyone where they can find your book, where they can find you?
Sure.
You mentioned a Patreon, I believe.
We do, yeah. Of course, yeah. So we love our
Plug
Patreons,
it
first of all. The big thing with Patreons is that the big benefit to being a Patreon of ours is that we do an actual play game every month featuring our Patreon subscribers. The other big thing is that they get early access to all of our episodes. So the long and the short of it is that you can check out our show at www.ttjourneys.com or search Tabletop Journeys wherever you listen to podcasts. We're on every service out there, we hope. And if we're not on the service that you use, please let us know and we will make sure to go ahead and get there. The best way to go ahead and get in touch with us is on Twitter. We are at ttjourneys, or you can email us at podcast@ttjourneys.com.
And Patreon is www.patreon.com/ttjourneys. We also have a number of our titles on DM's Guild, so you can get Traveler's Guide to the Multiverse. So we would recommend, because there's usually a coupon if you go to our website first, we'd recommend that method first. But for our other titles, right there on DM's Guild, just search for Tabletop Journeys. Our titles show up there. And we also have some swag that Glen is sporting one of our Tabletop Journey shirts right now. We have mugs, we have hats, we have face masks. There's even onesies for those who are about to bring in lots of new little gamers into the world.
I don't know who you're talking about.
My nephew was having a baby when I was designing this stuff, and they had a onesie. I couldn't help myself. And then one of my players was having a baby, so I sent him one too. It was great.
Yeah. So, and that's right at Tabletop Journey or Tabletop Journeys swagshop.creator
if you go to the www.ttjourneys.com website and you click on swag shop up at the top, that's probably your best bet.
Yeah,
that's quicker.
I was coughing. There's
it's complicated URL.
Yeah.
One other way that you can get the Traveler's Guide to the Multiverse or any of our future publications is we do have a Patreon tier where you get them for free.
Well, thanks so much for joining today. We've been out of initiative, but we're going to get back into it. So get out there, roll some dice, tell some stories, and we will see you next time.
I had an 8 and a 10.
Okay.
And I had a 1 and a 2.
Oh, I see. 1, 2.
We spoke over each other. Our bad.
That's okay. That's okay. I run games. You'd think I'd be better at like discerning a bunch of voices. Roll for initiative. Don't shout it at me all at once. Hold on.
You said roll, man.
Yeah.
I did say roll.
Again, D&D Beyond, if you use the encounter builder,
Yes.
they roll the initiative on the character. It fills in, like, I don't care if they roll anything else any other way, but I ask them to all please use D&D Beyond to roll initiative.
For initiative. Yeah.
We have we do a lot
So
of
nice.
meme rolls, like Smash or Pass is a really common one that comes up in our group when like a new NPC comes in. We do maybe a Smash or Pass check. What's my
Walking,
character
we
think
do
of
walking check if we're
them?
traveling.
Able to
Walking.
walk.
Walking. Yeah.
Moping silently. There's a lot of there's a lot of like when you talk about like crosstalk and video like role playing, a lot of that stuff, in order to not talk over people, we end up with these like the roll. So they roll initiative and I have to be like, don't roll anything else. Hold on. No joke rolls. Hold on. Let me write everything down.
It clutters the whole log, the game log.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. That was a really good take. I'm happy with that. Okay, so
They're not always that smooth.
that was good. That was one take.
Well,
I'm happy with that.
With the pressure on and an audience right here, great job.
I know, right?
Yeah, honestly, we would have taken like a lot of time to do that.
Yeah, that's why we don't do
Excellent.
that. We recorded it
like-
once. We use that one forever.
I want to do that, but I keep changing my clothes. God, like.
Thanks for listening to Out of Initiative, a podcast from Merely NPCs. For more from Sarah and Morgan, follow them on TikTok at Merely NPCs or visit them online at merelynpcs.com.